With the start of World War II came the rise of Hitler's ultimate strategy to expand German borders, as well as create a superior Aryan race, targeting anyone who did not fall within his agenda, specifically Jews. As the Nazi regime gained power, tragedy spread throughout Europe, and Jews were forced to fight for their survival. In the midst of the suffering rose a small village in southern France called Les Chambon, who, with the surrounding villages on the plateau, put their lives at risk to rescue 5,000 refugees, including 3,500 Jews. The people of Les Chambon chose to bring about triumph, saving the lives of thousands and impacting future generations. Les Chambon, fighting for triumph in the midst of great tragedy.
Facing a humiliating defeat in World War I, Germany conceded to the Versailles Treaty, leaving the country in a dismal state with a struggling economy. The people, desperate for a strong leader who could rebuild Germany, were easily seduced by Hitler's vision, paving the way for him to declare himself Führer in 1934. His plan was twofold: to recover German land and create a superior Aryan race, annihilating anyone who did not fit within his agenda. With anti-Semitism already widespread throughout Europe, Hitler easily made Jews the scapegoat for Germany's many struggles. Hitler's obsession with the Aryan race culminated in the ratification of anti-Semitic laws and the building of concentration camps across Europe. Jews became hunted.
We marched into the camp. The road was flanked by skeletons, by living skeletons that didn't look normal, they didn't look human. All you could perceive was their huge eyes, but nothing else. And I then prayed to God not to turn me into one of them. And yet, when we walked out of that room, shaven, I felt that now we've been turned into one of them.
After the onset of World War II, Germany invaded France on May 10, 1940. France fell to German forces in just under 6 weeks, leaving 3/5 of northern France under German control. The southern part of France became a puppet government, still taking orders from Germany, but ruled by French General Marshal Pétain. Pétain's new anti-Semitic laws proved to be even harsher than Germany's at the time. Jews were sent to internment camps within France, and many died due to the harsh conditions. Tragedy became rampant.
However, triumph had been brewing for generations in a small French village called Les Chambon, as well as its surrounding villages. In the 16th century, a group of Protestants, called Huguenots, were persecuted under Catholic rule and found refuge in the Vivarais Plateau. Tales of their tragic history were passed down through the generations, creating a culture within the plateau to aid anyone facing similar oppression.
This legacy culminated during World War II under the leadership of Pastor André Chakmé and other pastors on the plateau. André not only held strong Protestant beliefs, but he was also a resolute pacifist. After France fell to German forces, André and his colleague, Edward Thiers, risked Nazi retaliation by preaching a famous message to the villagers, challenging them to uphold their spiritual beliefs and fight the treachery using weapons of the spirit.
Pastor Tace, the other French pastor in Chambon, and my father, in front of the church, and instead of giving a sermon, they give a speech where they say, we must fight. We have to fight, but we have to fight with the weapons of the Spirit.
Seeing the suffering, André, with other pastors of the plateau, worked together with a Quaker organization to provide shelter for those the Quakers freed from the camps. Remembering their history, the people made the entire plateau a place of refuge for the many arriving Jews and children.
That didn't turn away anybody. That didn't betray anybody. That didn't attempt to convert anybody. It was, during that time in occupied France, one of the safest places for a Jewish person to be.
In time, they developed forging techniques, producing 50 false identity papers each week.
Meanwhile, the situation became grim for the Jews living in France. In July of 1942, Vichy officials arrested over 13,000 Jews, including 4,000 children, placing them in the Velodrome de Héros bicycle stadium under dismal conditions.
And every now and then there would be something flying out over the balconies and landing. And I didn't realize it at the time, but there were people killing themselves. They were committing suicide. They were jumping to their death.
Soon after, they were ultimately deported to concentration camp. Tragically, of the 13,000 arrested that day, only 780 survived.
Word of the Vel d'Hiv quickly spread to Les Chambon, only strengthening their resolve to aid the Jews. Finally, on August 10, 1942, two Vichy officials, Prefect Bach and Georges Lermarin, visited Les Chambon and were presented a letter of protest regarding the Vel d'Hiv arrests. In response, Les Chambon was subjected to over 30 raids in August of 1942 by Vichy officials.
And every once in a while, they would come into the classroom and they would tell us, "Oh, everybody out, we're going to go pick mushrooms." But as I learned after the war, they did this because they were tipped off that either the French police or the Germans were coming to look for Jews in Le Chambon.
When asked to provide the names of all Jews living amongst them, André responded, "We do not know what a Jew is, we only know men." Signs threatening the arrest of those hiding Jews were placed around town. Still, no one came forward.
The situation intensified when Hitler, fearing an Allied invasion, took control of southern France in November of 1942. Now with the German presence surrounding Les Chambon, danger was looming. Having already developed underground safe routes, guides volunteered to escort Jews into neutral Switzerland. Many found triumph, finally free from Nazi oppression.
However, great tragedy struck Les Chambon on June 29, 1943, when Daniel Trocmé, André's cousin, and 18 Jewish students were arrested and deported to concentration camps. Of those, 12 were murdered, including Daniel Trocmé, and only 7 remained alive.
During this time, André Trocmé, surrounded by danger, left Les Chambon along with Edward Thiers in July of 1943. However, the work continued as his wife Magda assumed a partial leadership role and the triumph taking place on the plateau thrived.
Eventually, on September 3, 1944, Les Chambon was finally liberated from Nazi control.
Even though Les Chambon is known for saving 5,000 refugees, among whom 3,500 Jews, one must consider the opposing viewpoints present at that time in French history. France had a long history of anti-Semitism, and segments of the population quietly supported Germany's anti-Semitic policies. In fact, when the Vel d'Hiv roundup occurred, not one German official took part in the operation. Also, Germany did not call for the arrests of any children under 16 years of age. Yet French officials arrested 4,000 children, none of whom survived. France remained silent about the Vel d'Hiv for the next 53 years, not acknowledging their role until 1995, when French President Jacques Chirac publicly took responsibility for France's role on that tragic day. Though Les Chambon found itself in the center of an anti-Semitic culture, they stood in opposition, choosing tolerance over hatred, and serving as a historical example to the rest of France.
Because the story of Le Chambon is a story of life, a story of hope, and it's also a story of freedom, because the people of Le Chambon at that time felt free, even if it was against Pétain and Vichy laws.
Les Chambon's brave stand not only saved the lives of 5,000 refugees, but also provided life for future generations who would not have existed without their efforts. Also, many survivors went on to make a tremendous impact on the world. Alexander Grothendieck became one of the greatest mathematicians of the 20th century. Another survivor, Peter Feigl, held a position at the Pentagon, negotiating U.S. military sales around the globe. Others, such as Harvard pathologist Micheline Fiederman, used the triumph they experienced in Les Chambon to influence the lives of many.
Finally, in 1990, Les Chambon was one of the 2 towns honored by Yad Vashem when they were given the Righteous Among the Nations Award. Many individuals from Les Chambon, including the Trocmés and the Thieses, were also given the award for their willingness to risk their own lives to save the Jews.
Eventually, in 2004, French President Jacques Chirac recognized the town's triumph when he gave an inspirational speech in Les Chambon, honoring the town's legacy and proclaiming their message of tolerance to the world.
Le Chambon-sur-Lignon is a place of remembrance, a place of resistance, a place that symbolizes a France true to her principles, true to her heritage, and true to her genius.
One survivor once said the Holocaust was storm, lightning, thunder, wind, rain. Yes, but Les Chambon was the rainbow.